Hi guys, welcome. If you're watching this, it's because you're taking algebra next year and you're not really sure what to expect, and so you're like, oh, maybe I should do a little bit of prepping for it. Congratulations, good job. Way to take the first step to prep yourself for next year's math. This is what we're going to be doing for this whole, not for this particular lesson, but this is going to be all of the videos around that, and of course, until I change my mind. If we've never met before, my name is Caitlin, and I'm here to prep you for algebra. Algebra is amazing. I love it. Super fun. You're going to love it, but you got to have this core foundation to really succeed at it. So the first thing we're going to do today is talk about fractions and operations with fractions. When I say operations, what I'm meaning is addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. So we're going to talk about those things, and we're going to talk about how fractions work. I am in the process of redoing my desk, so it looks a little gnarly right there. All right, guys, so grab a sheet of paper so that you can practice along. First things first, we're going to talk about fractions. Now, remember, fractions are just part over whole. That's all a fraction is. If you have a pie that is sliced up into 4 slices and you get one of them, you have 1/4 of the pie. This is your numerator. This is your denominator. I will perpetually say upstairs, downstairs, just because it's easier. So now you've got the right idea. Now, a mixed number is a number where you got 4 whole pies and you have half of a pie, or maybe you have 7 whole pies and you have 2/3 of a pie. You're adding those two things together, 4 and 1/2, 7 and 2/3. That and means add those all together. Now, we can take those mixed numbers and we can turn them into what's called an improper fraction. You know that you have an improper fraction when the upstairs, the numerator, is larger than the downstairs, just like we see on these 3 here. So let's really quick talk about how we can switch between mixed numbers and improper fractions. Mixed numbers to improper fractions is easy. They're both easy, but this is a little bit easier. What we do is we take 2 times 4 and then we add 1. So we're going to multiply here and then add there. So 2 times 4 is 8. Plus 1 more is 9, and our denominator remains the same. So over here, we know that denominator is going to be 3. 3 times 7 is 21. 22, 23. We add those together, so we get 23/3. Over here, 2 and 5/8. 8 times 2 is 16. Plus 5 is going to give me 21/8. So now we've gone from mixed number to improper fraction. Now let's go the other way. The easiest way that I have found to do this is, do you see how 4 is on top of the table? Now we're going to kick it under the table like this, and we're going to put that bottom one right out here. How many times does 3 go into 4? 1 time, without going over. 1 times 3 is 3, so we minus that. We have a remainder of 1. We take that remainder and we turn it into a fraction, and we put it over whatever is on the outside here, or whatever is our denominator here. So 4/3 is going to be 1 and 1/3. Let's try that with this guy. 29 is on top of the table, so we're going to put it under. 6 goes into 29 4 times. Yeah, because 5 times would be 30, so that's too much. 6 times 4 is 24. We're going to do some math here. 29 minus 24 is going to be 5. So I have 5/6 is my remainder. So 4 and 5/6. Over here, we've got 15, and then we've got 34 under the table. 15 goes into 34 2 times. 2 times 15 is 30. Practicing my math here, which gives me a remainder of 4. So we've got 2 and 4/15. If you don't already have it, make sure that you get a multiplication chart that goes up to 20, because that'll be a lot better than going up to just 12. I like to look nice on top when I record these videos, but then I wear sweatpants that are blue and they don't match, but I'm comfortable, so sorry, you're just gonna have to deal with it. Okay, so now the next part that we have to talk about is reducing fractions. I know you probably remember doing this in your pre-algebra class, but it is so vitally important from now until forever. Anytime you have a fraction, you must reduce it unless the instructions explicitly say, I don't want you to reduce the fractions, okay? So taking a look at this, there's a couple different ways we can reduce fractions, and I'll show you a couple different ways. The idea is you want to learn 2, 3, and 5. If you're going to reduce a fraction, it's probably by one of those things, sometimes 7, so you need to know your multiples of 7. The first way we can reduce this is we can find our a greatest common factor that involves those. Factors of 5 are 1 and 5. Factors of 15 are 1. So like if we did it over here, 5 is going to be 1 and 5. 15 is going to be 1 times 15, 3 times 5. The largest factor that they have in common is 5. So I'm going to divide this by 5, divide this by 5, and I get 1 over 3. If you don't know your greatest common factor, you don't necessarily need to. You can ask yourself, now remember, we know something is divisible by 2 if it ends in an even number. We know something is divisible by 5 if it ends in a 5 or a 0. We know something is divisible by 3. If you add these up and whatever that number is divisible by 3, then that big number is divisible by 3. What I mean by that is, over here, 1 plus 5 is 6. Does 3 go into 6? Sure does. So 3 would go into 15. Now 5 does not go into 15, so we couldn't divide that by, or 5 does not go into 3 does not go into 5, so we couldn't divide that earlier. So over here, 2 plus 4, okay, that's 6. 3 goes into 6, so 3 is going to go into 24. 6 plus 1 is 7. 3 does not go into 7, so 3 is not going to go into 16. However, both of these are even, so at the very least, what we can do is cut it in half. Divide this by 2, divide this by 2. We end up with 12 over 8. All right, well, those are still both even numbers. So let's try it again. Divide by 2, divide by 2. We get 6 over 4. Those are still even numbers, so let's keep dividing. Divide by 2, divide by 2. We get 3 over 2. There we go. So what we could have done from the outset is divide both of these by 8. And we would have gotten 3 and divide this by 8 over here. But if you don't know your greatest common factor, it's totally legit just to keep dividing by 2 until it gets down to something that you know. That is completely fair to do. Another way of doing this is, let's try this guy. Yeah, let's do this. We're going to do same thing here if we just divide it by 2, but we can also just divide by 4 if we happen to know our greatest common factor. That's going to give us 1 over 8. Another way that we can do this is, I know 66 only has 2 factors aside from 1, and that is 6, or I guess aside from 1 and 66. So the other 2 factors would be 6 and 11. Well, taking a look down here, I know 6 goes into 48. 6 times 8 is 48. So now what I can do is kablam, cross those out. Remember, if you have something upstairs, something downstairs, you can cross those out. So my reduced fraction is 11 over 8. All right, guys, now what we're going to do is talk about adding up these fractions. Adding up these fractions. Hang on one sec. Okay, so adding up these fractions requires us to find our least common denominator. And the way that we can find that is we can generally multiply our 2 denominators together, and that will work. That will be our common denominator, but it's not always the least one. Let's talk about that. Over here, 3 and 5, the least common denominator is going to be 15. 3 doesn't go into 5, so we do have to multiply them together. So multiply this by 3, and what we do downstairs, we got to do upstairs. Over here, we're going to multiply this by 5 times 5. And so now what I have is 5 over 15 plus 6 over 15. 5 fifteenths plus 6 fifteenths gives me 11 fifteenths. Those, to add our fractions, you have to have a common denominator. Okay, so like I said, you can usually multiply them together, but this is a really good case where you cannot just multiply them together. 6 times 8 is 48, but guys, that is not our least common denominator. Our least common denominator here, I would think, is going to be 24. If I multiply this by 4, and this by 3 times 3, that will give me 24 on the bottom. So now what I have is 4 24ths plus 21 24ths. All right, so what I get here is 25 24ths. 25 24ths. Okay, so that is how you add fractions, right? When you don't have your common denominator, you got to make sure to do it. And if you're looking at this and you're thinking, it's a little bit tricky, it's a lot easier if you know your multiplication tables. So hop online, play some games, make sure you know those multiplication tables. Trust me, your life will be so much easier. All right, let's talk about these guys where we have a mixed number and we're adding them. Now, you may have in the past turned these into improper fractions, then found your common denominator, and then turned them back into a mixed number. No, I'm lazy. I'm going to do the easiest thing possible. What we want to do on these guys is we're going to deal with our fraction bit, and then we're going to take whatever that is and we're going to add it to our whole number bit. So looking at this fraction bit right here, 5 and 8. The least common denominator is going to be when I multiply them together and get 40. So times by 5, times by 5, times by 8, times by 8. So now what I have is 24 over 40, and I have 5 over 40. What that gives me is 24 and 5 gives me 29 over 40, and I can't reduce that down at all because 29 is a prime number and it doesn't go into 40. Over here, though, I have 13 plus 2, so that's 15. Bam! That is my answer right there without having to turn it into an improper fraction and then add it together and then turn it back into a mixed number. Blah. So let's try that again. Over here, 5 and 2, so dealing just with the fraction bits, 5 and 2 is going to be 10. So times that by 2, times that by 2, times that by 5, times that by 5. So what I get now is 5 over 10 and 2 over 10. Add those guys together and I get 7 over 10, 5 and 7/10. Now I need to pause this for just a second. All right, so now what we're going to do is subtracting with borrowing. We're going to use that same method where we do just the fraction bit first, then we go and we deal with the whole numbers. However, we sometimes have to borrow when this happens. What I mean by that is 5 and 3 we already know is 15. So multiply this by 3, multiply this by 3, multiply this by 5, this by 5. I get 5 and 15 minus, and then that's 12/15. Well, 5 minus 12 here is going to give me a negative number. That's when I know I need to borrow. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to borrow one whole one from this, so it becomes now 14. Whatever this number is on the bottom, I add it to this number up here, okay? So now let's rewrite that. We've got 14 and 20/15. So you see we have an improper fraction in our mixed number. A little crazy, but it'll work for what we're doing. And 7 and 12/15 minus those guys. All right, let's just deal with the fraction bits. 20 minus 12 is going to give me 8/15. 14 minus 7 gives me 7. That is my answer. All right, over here we have 15. Over here we have 3. So times that by 3, times it by 3, I get 6/15 minus 7/15. 6 minus 7, that gives me a negative number, so I need to borrow. So this is going to be 21. Whatever this is on the bottom, I add it up here. So let's rewrite that. 21 and 21/15 minus 13 and 7/15. All right, so that on this side is going to give me 21 minus 7 is going to be 14/15. 21 minus 13 is going to give me 7/8. So 8 and 14/15. That would be my answer there. All right, guys, if you have any questions about this, let me know. I'm going to post a video or a worksheet down below so that you can practice these and get a good handle on how to do that. All right, good luck. Thanks, guys.